Conspiracy Unlimited with Richard Serrett.
We are currently preparing awareness courses for all sectors of society, including the media, because the media don't know anything. They don't know anything of the real evidential history. Scientists, the vast majority of scientists, it's been a taboo subject, so they know nothing. The vast majority of astronomers know nothing. The vast majority of universities know nothing about the evidential history. So we're preparing courses to allay different sectors of society, to help prepare them.
If you enjoy Conspiracy Unlimited, why not become a Conspiracy Unlimited Plus member? For just $1.99 per month, you'll gain access to 2 bonus, exclusive commercial-free episodes per month, plus access to my back catalog of episodes. To subscribe, just go to conspiracyunlimitedpodcast.com and click on Gain Access to Premium Episodes. Again, go to conspiracyunlimitedpodcast.com and click on Get Access to Premium Episodes, or click on the link in the episode notes. Conspiracy Unlimited Plus for less than $2 per month. Why not sign up today?
Conspiracy Unlimited with Richard Serrett. Pursuing the truth wherever it leads. Exposing evil and corruption and the secret machinations of powerful elites. Revealing the high strangeness beneath the surface of our supposed reality. Coming to you from his studio beneath the stairs, here's Richard Serrett.
There's a brand new organization of scientists, academics, researchers from 27 countries and 5 continents who are unanimous in their recognition that we are not alone in the cosmos. Based on more than 75 years of research, ICER, the International Coalition of Extraterrestrial Research, acknowledges that the UFO-UAP phenomenon is real. It acts with intelligence and is likely to be extraterrestrial, non-human in origin. ICER believes all countries now need to prepare for confirmation that the Earth is being engaged by non-human intelligences and purposes awareness programs be established to deal with the profound issue of contact and its global implications. The organization's launch comes in the wake of recent verified events. One, a New York Times article from the 16th of December, 2017, which revealed a hitherto secret UFO-UAP research program into the phenomenon between 2007, 2012, with a $22 million budget. And the article confirmed that U.S. Navy fighter pilots had captured astonishing footage of unidentified aerial vehicles operating in the airspace of the United States in a series of infrared videos taken in 2004 and 2015. Significantly, the objects observed were unlike anything the pilots had seen before and moved in spectacular ways that appeared to be technologically far beyond anything man has yet developed. In June 2020, a U.S. Navy task force was created to investigate these objects, which pilots are encountering with increasing frequency. ICER aims to take this discussion to the highest levels of governance, including the United Nations. Tonight, 2 members of the International Coalition of Extraterrestrial Research, former police detective Gary Hesseltine is the vice president. Using skills finely honed as a home office-trained police officer, Gary has examined cases with the best evidence, those that have high-caliber witnesses with special knowledge, often corroborated by technology. He concludes on circumstantial evidence that some unidentified objects are real and act as if intelligently controlled, and that whatever is behind them is likely to be extraterrestrial or non-human. He spoke on behalf of police officers worldwide who had experienced sightings at the citizen hearing on disclosure at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. back in 2013. He spent 6 years in the Royal Air Force Police before serving in the British Transport Police between 1989 and 2013. As an advanced police interviewer of suspects and witnesses, he worked on complex cases such as murder, manslaughter, and rape. He was a specialist interviewer of first responder BTP officers at the inquiry into the 2005 London terrorist bombing. Gary undertook a 4-year re-investigation of Britain's most famous UFO event at Rendlesham Forest, Suffolk, close to the twin bases of RAF Woodbridge and RAF Bentwaters, used at the time by the U.S. Air Force. He was writing a book on it that will, or he did write a book on it that will feature new military witness testimonies that should significantly change the existing narrative. And he was also the lead researcher on a feature-length documentary on the case called Capel Green, after the field where some of the events occurred. Gary Hesseltine, welcome back. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me back.
It's been a while. So this is exciting. Do we call it ICER? Is that the
Yes, that's perfect pronunciation, ICER.
All right.
Nice and easy to remember.
Right. And you're vice president. How did this all come together?
Strangely, I became involved after Don. Don, who obviously will speak later about this, he and Roberto Pinotti, who is the president of ICER, he's a very well-known Italian researcher with 50 years of experience, former military officer. He and Don were invited to go to China, believe it or not, on the guise of a supposed Chinese UFO group's disclosure initiative. And the idea was originally to get 30 countries together with a view to trying to get to the UN at some point. Now, Don and Roberto went to China, I think it was February of 2018, and from that they were encouraged to start seeking out well-known researchers, etc., and scientists and academics. And basically what happened was that a conference was set up in Moscow for October of 2018. And it was during that process of trying to recruit people, as it were, and it was kind of all done on a peer review, people that you knew and trusted, etc., that I got invited by Don to go to Moscow. And that was particularly exciting for me because for someone who'd been in the military, who'd lived through the Cold War, as it were, Moscow was very much a place which you couldn't get to for many, many years. So I obviously knew its historical significance, but it's also a beautiful city, and I'd seen Red Square and beautiful buildings around it and churches. So I jumped at the chance to go. It wasn't easy to get there because you had to jump through a lot of hoops, getting visas, etc. But nevertheless, got there, and 8 of us turned up there to meet with the Chinese delegation. And we, over the course of 3 days, we sat round the table and had discussions. And the core principles of this new organization that was going to be funded by the Chinese UFO group, I might add. We never were told where the money was coming from, although many people will say that nothing happens in China without the leadership knowing. But
right.
We never.
Is that a concern? Is that a concern, Gary, that the communist Chinese might be involved?
Well, if I tell the story, it was a failed Chinese initiative. It wasn't at the time because we were told that it was money from a Chinese UFO group. They didn't explain where the money came from, and obviously a lot of people who were attending, i.e. the 8 of us meeting with the Chinese, were just eager to find out what was what. So we met in Moscow over 3 days, had talks, and basically agreed that we would go back to our respective countries and try to recruit more people to the broad principle of trying to get 30 countries. And so that's what we did. But one of the things that we agreed whilst we were in Moscow was that it would be one country, one vote, regardless of the size of the country. So you can't really get any more democratic than that. That would not lead to, like, big countries overpowering smaller countries. So that was an important principle. We agreed that everybody who joined ICER, it wasn't called ICER then, we didn't have a name. Whoever joined us would have to sign an oath that basically said that we, after looking at the research over 70 plus years, that we thought the phenomenon was real, acted with intelligence, and was likely to be extraterrestrial or non-human. So that's still the case. Anybody that joins ISA has to sign that, which in a sense was my suggestion, because there's always been loads of infighting within the UFO communities, and that's probably why we've never had any kind of real say-so in a political sense, not in the sense of a party, but having any real power. I don't think we've been very good at organising, because we've been too busy infighting over the years. So the idea of the oath was to say, look, we're all going to sign this, else you don't become one of us, and therefore you, in essence, what you're trying to do is create a like-minded body, which is what we've got. And I can honestly say that since we began the process of preparing to go public, which was in June of 2020, we've never had any wrong words in any of the live Zoom meetings, even though you've got South Americans, you've got Asians, you've got Europeans, you've got all manner of people with different cultural backgrounds, but we've never had a wrong word yet. So I think the idea of the oath works, and it pulls us together and binds us together in a way that you don't usually see UFO organizations do so. And I think what makes us a lot different from anyone else is the fact that we are truly international. There are many groups with international members, but I doubt very much that there's any that are in regular contact on a week-to-week basis, like we are, with 3 or 4 meetings a week, especially in the run-up to the launch. So we have got to know each other. And just going back, I'll finish the story of the Chinese involvement. From that meeting in Moscow, we said, look, if you're serious, we'll do this, but you need to show us that you're serious. So we would like you to organize a conference for whoever many people we get for February 2019, February, March, something like that. And they said, yeah, fair enough. So we left Moscow on, cautiously optimistic that this was a new idea and we were going to explore it. However, by February, nothing had come, nothing had been arranged. We were told that there were some problems, there'd been some kind of mining disaster in the town or the city where they planned to have the meeting. We then said, okay, well, when are you going to have this conference, inviting us all back, all there? And they didn't come back to us, and we waited months. And collectively, we began to doubt that this was ever going to happen. But by that time, we'd probably gotten 19 or 20 countries' representatives, national representatives, more or less agreed in principle. So we were a bit frustrated. We kept leaving messages, nothing happened. There'd be the odd sporadic message saying, yeah, something will happen, but it didn't. So we basically said that if it gets to the anniversary of that Moscow conference, i.e. October 2019, if we hadn't heard anything by then, we'd assume that Chinese initiative was dead. And that actually came to pass. Nothing happened. So then we kind of sat and did nothing for a while. And then it got into 2020. We got into a pandemic and people are in lockdown. And I'm thinking everybody's using Zoom. So that's speeded up the process. Everybody's talking to each other on camera, as it were. So I suddenly thought this would be foolish to let this goodwill go. So I organized a pro Zoom account and then started contacting people from the Moscow conference and the ones that had provisionally agreed to the principle. And we began our first meetings in June of 2020. And as I said, from then it just increased. We set up working party groups to look at, one was called communications, another one was called working on the ethics, the mission statement, etc. And we looked at various things over many months, and the working groups kept reporting back. and we'd have various different types of meetings 3-4 times a week. And that culminated into our launch on the 25th of May, just almost 3 weeks ago. And here we are, been very, very busy since. We began with a worldwide newswire release that went, I think, to something like 150,000 news agencies around the world. And what we also did in each of our 27 countries, because it was 27 countries at the launch, was we were having a mail blitz in each of those countries as well. So we'd written to all sectors of society, right from heads of government to heads of defence, aviation, university, educational, all sectors of society, trying to say, look, this situation that's now developing in America, i.e. the US Task Force, Navy Task Force, things are happening at an unprecedented frequency, level that I've never seen in my time, and I've talked it over with Don, and he agrees. The amount of serious, important people who've gone on the record making very positive statements that it's time to be more transparent. That basically we were in a situation where we were well on the way to creating something. So 27 countries, 5 continents. It's never been done on a global aspect. We wanted to draw attention to the fact that we should be preparing now for a new reality. Regardless of the politics of a pandemic, a lot of people have suffered psychologically because they were kept in lockdown for months on end, and there was a really lack of forethought. Nobody thought a real pandemic would happen, and so countries were way underprepared. And there are similarities with what ISA is proposing now, because what ISA is proposing is that instead of waiting for that reality to hit home and suddenly 95% of the world who've been led to believe for 70 years that we're all crackpots are suddenly going to get told, well, actually there is something to this and it is likely to be extraterrestrial or non-human because we can't explain it. That would be like hitting a brick wall for a lot of people. So how do you kind of stop that happening? Well, you begin now by saying, what if? What if it is real? And whether it's on the 25th of June, whether it's an interim report, whether it's a bit of a whitewash where we're saying, well, yeah, there's 120 incidents. Most of them we can't explain, but we can't prove that it's extraterrestrial, which is kind of like a cop-out because they're saying we can't prove it isn't, but we can't prove it is either. So it's a $64,000 question. But America has now ruled itself out. So instead of a 3-horse race, we're into a 2-horse race. Now, if you'd have said in terms of the UFO community a year ago, would you be happy to be in a 50-50 race with foreign adversary or ET non-human, then I think everybody would have snapped their hands off, because that's what we're at now. And this is why it's not a negative, even though it was this so-called leak of the report said, oh, we can't prove it's extraterrestrial. We know that that's a play on words, but it's very easily argued that it's not for an adversary if you know the history of the subject. Well, from ISA's point of view, we've got academics who study this subject, an astronomer who's soon to be in a book with Avi Loeb, so obviously a well-known astronomer. We've got many of the world's leading researchers from around the world, people like Don Schmidt, the leading Roswell researcher. We've got people like Victor Vijani of Zedland from Canada. We've got Susan Hansen from New Zealand, Cheryl Gottschall from Australia. These are people with decades of experience, and so I think we worked it out that collectively, history-wise of investigation and research, we've got something like 200 to 300 years of experience collectively. Now, unfortunately, the rest of the world, unless you're in the UFO community, and 95% of people, I would hazard a guess, don't have a clue about any of the evidential history.
I've been reading in the press material, Gary, that you want to get to 50 countries. Is that an important number? I mean, obviously it would be impressive to have 50 countries, but is there a specific meaning to that? Do you have to have 50 countries, for example, to be able to speak before UNESCO, the United Nations?
No, I think there was I don't know where the 50 has come from, to be honest. I think that the number that would be needed would be 30 to be truly recognized as a world organization. I think that's why the Chinese chose 30. It was to be recognized as a world organization. Now, let me just explain. Obviously, ISA wants to take this to the highest levels of governance, including the UN. But let me state that the UN is different. You can't just, as an international NGO, just approach the UN and say, I want to have a question raised on the UN floor. It doesn't work like that. The UN, the only people that can ask questions on the UN floor are actually other nations. However, what you can do as an international NGO is you can accrue a body of work over time that's then recognized that you will have special consultative status to the UN. But what you still need is a nation state to say, right, yes, I like the work of ISA. They've done good work over the years, and I will now kind of adopt ISA and ask a question on their behalf. So it has to be another nation state to ask questions. However, the key thing for us is getting to that consultative status. However, with the likes of the recent reports where the Chinese are actually coincidentally saying that Chinese leader is saying that he might want to brief the UN about UFOs or UAP in China, then that would be very interesting, because suddenly you've got a nation state introducing this, so they can ask and they can say, right, we want a debate on the floor, and that would be really interesting. But the real shock is going to be that 95% of the world is not prepared for this. And yes, people will say, well, no, people say, well, it's 50% in a Gallup poll and whatever. But that doesn't mean anything. That's just ask me a quick question. Do you believe there's UFOs? Yeah, there might be 20, 30% or whatever. That doesn't mean anything. But none of them have knowledge. So the only people with knowledge are, in a sense, leading researchers, people who've studied this privately for a long time. But there's so much rubbish out there and so much division within the UFO community. Who do you go to? So what ISA's coming together is to say, look, we need to create awareness programs. How do you bring that reality crash scenario down? And also, obviously, if things are flying around in the US airspace with impunity, as Luis Elizondo is saying, as Chris Mellon is saying, then technically there is a vulnerability there to the US nation, and there is that threat element. But ISA is specifically coming onto the world stage to say, well, hang on a minute, this is a global phenomenon. A lot of people in America think it's just America that has these sightings. It's not. It's a worldwide phenomenon. And two, yes, technically there is a threat there. However, if you know your history of the subject, which 95% of people don't, then over the last 70 years, people like ISA's very extensive knowledge of research accrued over many decades will say, look, over the last 70 years, there is no overt threat to the world, because these things have been around for a long time. And in fact, what we did for the press was create a 60-case summary document, a PDF, just for the press to say, look, here you go, 60 cases, it's not a big, thick document, it's one case summary per page with a few little references and an aspects of intelligent behavior, just to give them a flavor. Now, the first case in that goes back to 1942, and it's not a Foo Fighter, which most people associate with the Second World War. Sometimes other than balls of light were seen. And one case that's in the National Archives at Kew in London details a case from 1942, And if you want, I'll tell you this case, because I pretty much guarantee that 99% of your listeners will have never heard of this classic case.
I don't think I've heard it either, Gary. So please, yes,
all right,
do tell.
Okay. All right. In the National Archives, there is a document that was formerly secret, and it was so sensitive at the time, it was recorded in 1942, that a very senior officer wrote on the cover, "This is an incredible report. Basically, all the aircrew are standing steadfast to their story as to the details inside." And the details of what they saw, it was a Lancaster bomber crew, a 4-engined propeller bomber of the Second World War, one of the larger bombers of the Second World War, was on a raid over Turin in Italy. And basically, the captain was Captain Lever, with a crew of 8, including himself. And when they were 15 miles south of Turin, they saw a huge cylindrical object that they estimated to be between 200 to 300 feet in length and about 40 feet in diameter. And it also had sections that were darker, like a light area, dark area, light area, dark area. So this looked metallic. It was flying at approximately 400 to 500 miles an hour. So this completely rules out any kind of an airship kind of scenario. No noise, no air disturbance, and all 8 air crew saw it. And amazingly, on the way back from the raid from Turin, they saw it again, going through a mountain pass in a slightly different direction, but they saw it again. And when they landed, they got debriefed, and they said, "We saw this strange thing," and they were told, "Keep quiet." It was so bizarre. It obviously went up very high in the chain of command, and that's why this senior officer put this docket onto it, saying, "Look, this is an absolutely bizarre thing, but we don't want to tell anybody about it because it might frighten the other air crews, and might them be fearful of going on raids." So this is a document that's in existence. You can actually go to the National Archives, proving that there was a cylindrical object. Now, the question you've got to ask yourself is, that was in 1942, multiple corroborated on 2 occasions by the crew of 8. All right, so 400 to 500 miles an hour, 200 to 300 feet in length. Have we then got an object that we could put in a terrestrial bracket? The closest thing that you'd get to it is an airship, but the airship could not travel at 400 to 500 miles an hour. And when we now jump all these years later to 2021, have we got anything that can fly at 400 to 500 miles an hour? Yes. But have we got anything that flies at 200 to 300 feet in length and is cylindrical, that has no wings, no tail, and no control surfaces propulsion system? And the answer is no. So what you saw in 1942 has never been explained, can't be explained by secret stealth, because the stealth argument is only good for 20 years. If you think of the F-117, the little batwing plane that emerged in 1991 with the first Gulf War, that first flew in 1975. 16-year gap before going public. So, okay, let's use the stealth argument. Whatever that object was that was seen in 1942 should have been out by 62. And obviously things that were seen in 62 should have been out in 82. So the stealth argument doesn't work. But neither does the foreign adversary if the press are going to go down the line. And what you've got at the moment is the press almost childlike, because they're asking questions about a subject that they, until very recently, they thought was just Looney Tunes. So they're asking very bad questions in the main, not all of them, but a lot of them having great difficulty asking questions about this, and you can see it on the faces, and they want to make a joke. And some of them, I remember seeing Chris Cuomo on CNN, and he's saying, "I can't believe I'm asking this." And he was reading off his screen, so he had to read it out because he had 2 guests to interview. But you can see that the press are having a real difficulty,
right, with few exceptions,
adjusting. Yeah,
right.
With perception.
I think Forrest Tucker has done a Forrest Tucker. I keep saying Forrest Tucker. Tucker Carlson.
The actor, Forrest Tucker. I remember the actor. You're giving our age away.
From F Troop. Yes.
Absolutely.
I don't know why I have this block. I keep saying Forrest Tucker.
No,
Tucker Carlson.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Tucker Carlson has done a pretty good job.
Tucker Carlson is doing an excellent job.
Gary, we'll take a time out here. Back with more in a moment. Don't go away.
C60 Evo delivers the miracle molecule, ESS60. It's pure carbon 60. Why not love your body and share C60 Evo with those you love? ESS60 from C60 Evo is a mega antioxidant for increased strength, endurance, flexibility, and a deeper sleep. It's great for pets too. I take a tablespoon every day, and so does the mighty Aphrodite. We're both sleeping better than we have in years. And during the day, we have such tremendous energy and vitality. We're both pain-free. In a landmark peer-reviewed animal study in Paris, France, rats fed ESS60 lived twice their normal lifespan. Go to c60evo.com/Richard-Serrett or click on the C60 Evo link in the episode notes. Use the code EVRS at checkout and save 10%. ESS60 from C60 Evo. Order your miracle in a bottle today.
As you're staring up at the night sky, ever wonder who's staring back? No, me either. But I guess you better say it because of Richard. He's all wrapped up in this stuff. Conspiracy Unlimited with Richard Serrett.
All right, back with Gary Heseltine, Vice President of ICER. Now, let me ask one of those, it may be one of those dumb questions from the mainstream media. I don't consider myself mainstream media. However, and you mentioned earlier, this is now down to a two-horse race. It's either aliens or it's a foreign adversary. But given the, you talked about stealth programs and how they're kind of like there's this 20-year gap. But what if these stealth programs are, in fact, Gary, window dressing? People talk about the secret space program. We hear from whistleblowers, people like Gary McKinnon, the idea that there are deep space platforms and so forth. So it may not be 20 years. It may be 100 years or even longer. What about the idea of a breakaway civilization? And that so the United States could say, well, it's not us, which is technically true because the people that have this technology and this ability, they have no allegiance to a flag or a country.
The way I look at that is it's possible, but as a former detective, I would say that there's not enough evidence to convince me that there is a breakaway civilization. Or I certainly think it's possible that when you know how governments work and how special access programs work, all of those things are true. So, for example, if Roswell was true, which I believe it was, and they recovered a craft then you would try to reverse engineer it. Of course you would, because you'd want that leap in technology. And whoever possessed that technology would say, well, that makes us the strongest nation on Earth. And I tend to think that may well have happened. But can we prove it conclusively? No, we can't, because we still can't produce the alien body. We can't produce the spacecraft. But so that's the way I look at it. I can only look at this subject through evidential eyes because I've got 30 years of collective police experience. And so on the balance of everything that I've seen, I'm not convinced that there is enough evidence to say that there is a breakaway civilization. That's my take on it.
Right. Okay. So you mentioned the 95% of us that so in many respects it's like starting at square one. So in terms of your mission statement, how are you going to reach that 95% to prepare them for what you say is coming? Are we talking about getting this information into universities, perhaps a university course?
We are currently preparing awareness courses for all sectors of society, including the media, because the media don't know anything. They don't know anything of the real evidential history. Scientists, the vast majority of scientists, it's been a taboo subject, so they know nothing. The vast majority of astronomers know nothing. The vast majority of universities know nothing about the evidential history. So we're preparing courses to allay different sectors of society to help prepare them, including ones obviously for the public, who are probably going to be some of the most alarmed, because some people, I don't think anybody is going to be frightened in the sense of an Independence Day scenario or a War of the Worlds scenario, Orson Welles 1938, where people are going to drive in the cars up to the hills and, think we're being invaded. I think the world has changed a great deal. We live in a really fast connected world now through social media, etc. And I think a lot of people are, in essence, open to the idea that there is something. But there's a difference between I'm open to the idea and then suddenly being told that there is. Now, whether it's now or in 6 months or in a year's time, I think all the comments that have come from these prominent people with increasing regularity over the last 3 to 6 months means that how do you ever change that scenario? How can you suddenly, well, for example, let's go to the 25th, the DNI. He's got two previous DNIs, James Clapper and John Ratcliffe, who were both saying, actually, yeah, we should have been more transparent. There's loads of these things. We can't explain them, blah, blah, blah. You suddenly can't put that genie back in the bottle. So you've got two presidents who never said anything when they were in office, who suddenly have now said things that are amazing, like the Obama quote. He must have been on hundreds of talk shows over the last 20 years, and he has never, ever spoken in specifics. And then suddenly he says, yeah, we've got stuff, we've got records, we've got footage, we can't explain what they are, we don't really know what they are, and we can't explain how they move. Never, ever done that. And I immediately thought, why? Why is he saying that now? And then I'm thinking, well, is he trying to tip off President Biden, who was obviously his vice president during his 2 terms of office? So was he giving him the keys to the kingdom and say, look, yeah, it's time to ease the story on this and let's be more transparent? I don't somehow think that the DNI on the 25th is going to suddenly say, yeah, it's extraterrestrial or non-human. But I think that, and I'm hoping, that the media will step up to the plate, because you can look at the media two ways. You can either say they've been a willing, culpable part of the cover-up for 70 years, or they've been a victim of the cover-up. Either way, most of them don't have a clue, genuinely don't have a clue. All right?
All right.
So I think this is where you're at now, and I'm hoping that the media step up and say, oh, hang on a minute, you're saying it's not, you can't prove it's ET, but can you prove it's foreign technology? And the answer will be, well, no. Well, can you prove it's not ET? That's what I'm hoping that they're going to say. And they're not going to let this go. Because I do think what's changed with the 3 Fleur videos from 2017 is when they came out, it was the first time the press could say to somebody, what is that? They could, that, especially the Go Fast, where it's skimming above the water. What is that? Tell me what that is. And then they had something tangible that they could hook onto.
Why go through the UN, Gary? I'm not sure what the point would be. They don't know much of anything.
Well, obviously you don't have a high opinion of the UN, but I still think that it's got its important part to play. It may not seem like it in the day-to-day politics of many countries, but the UN, I think, is overall still highly regarded on the whole. So I think that is the place where countries talk to each other. It's a kind of, we've just had President Biden in the UK, still is, I think, and we've had the G7, which is just 7 countries. But obviously the UN, there's hundreds of countries, or I'm not quite sure how many, but many, well over 100 countries are part of the UN. So that is the forum where you discuss things really on a global basis, or where you should be discussing things on a global basis. So from going to your own government in your own particular country, which our national representatives have written to, emailed, etc., That's one approach. But obviously, in time, we want to get to the United Nations because that's where all countries are. And you can have this wider debate. And obviously, historically, we with the Grenada from 1978, we got it on the floor for a few hours, albeit it was quickly, it was left on file and he was replaced in a coup mysteriously. But there you go. The point is, most people, I think, would still say that the UN has a part to play.
What are you expecting on June 25th from the Pentagon? Are your expectations low?
I don't expect it to be disclosure with a big D, if that's what we're kind of talking about. I expect it to be another important step. And this is why I say that the press can play a part in keeping the pressure on, because I do expect the DNI to say, look, we've maybe had 100 and odd incidents. Most of them we can't explain. We can't prove that it's extraterrestrial. But then by the same token, they won't be able to prove that it's not extraterrestrial. And that's the press question that I want them to really dig into and said, you're not getting away with that play on words. You need to give us more. And they need to start releasing the data. Luis Elizondo has already said that the 3 grainy videos from 2017, he has seen much sharper images, many more very good videos taken by military personnel. Those should come out. I think that there should be pressure brought about by the likes of John Greenwald, by the press, etc., to get those kind of videos out. We need all the data from the ships, the Omaha, the Princeton, regarding the Nimitz incident, etc. There's loads of telemetry data there, radar data, that can be scientifically researched now. And that's what we need to have, is open transparency and say, look, okay, what's happened has happened, but now let's be transparent and let's move forward together as the human race.
What do you think they are? I've had a number of people ask me whether there's a connection between orbs and UFOs. People seeing orbs in the sky, wondering if they might be related.
I think many UFOs seen are orbs. But what do you mean by orbs? Orbs as in spheres, or orbs as in small things that you see on cameras, camera effect kind of thing? I don't know if you're talking about the latter, but I do think that UFOs come in all shapes and sizes. For me, I think that they're probably living things as much as anything else, because you see some UFOs, in very good cases, seem to transform their shape as if it's able to morph to whatever they want. So I think we're dealing with a technology. And what does Luis Elizondo say that goes away from the foreign adversary angle? You're talking of a technology that's 100 to 1,000 years leap, not just the next generation, 100 to 1,000 years leap. How do you explain that?
Well, then, what about Ben Rich's oft-cited quote from Skunkworks saying that we have things in the hangar out in the desert that are 50 years beyond your wildest dream. If you've seen it on Star Wars or Star Trek, we've been there, done that, or decided it wasn't worth the effort. Was that sort of disinfo? Was he trying to scare off our adversaries?
I don't know. I wish he was around to ask and say, well, what did you really mean? Because it's one of those great quotes that come out, and he certainly had the background to know, or should know, what was going on and what we had in secrets, as it were. But we can't prove that. And that's the bottom line, is what can we prove? And you can't prove what he said.
I want to ask you, we've just got a couple minutes here, but I want to ask you about some of the members. First of all, how does one get on board? I mean, are you looking for more like scientists, academics to join up? How do they get involved?
At this stage, I would say that of the 27 nations, most have been, if not all, have been by peer review recommendation. What I mean by that is, like, Don approached me, and very kindly, he obviously thought I was a good researcher, so he approached me. I then knew other people and said, well, I think he'd be good, she'd be good. And we've kind of appointed each other and made those approaches. There's been a couple of times when we've approached people and they've said, no, I'm too busy writing books, blah, blah, blah. So they haven't become the national representatives. We are currently looking for other national representatives. But what I want to say is it's not about quantity, it's about quality now. And now that we are public, we have to be very careful who we take on. Lots of people are saying, I'll do it. But no, we need to check out those people and make sure they have a body of research, especially when you go into places like Africa where we don't really know much about African UFO research. I'd love to find serious researchers who can say, yeah, I've been doing this for X number of years. Here's the reports that I've looked into. And then that would be great. But they've got to be bona fide researchers, not armchair experts, and there are many of those.
Tell us about Professor Lachazar Filipov of Bulgaria, this astrophysicist.
He has got an amazing CV. He's from Bulgaria, and he's at the Academy of Sciences, and he trained Bulgaria's first astronauts. So that's the caliber of his work. I mean, he's now probably in his late 60s, but for many, many years he has been holding UFO conferences or UFO-related conferences at risk to his job on many occasions because he was going out on a limb when it was stigmatized. But he is a pioneer, and he is a space astrophysicist. You know, he's got a lot of talent, and he's one of the pioneers who in his own country has done more to get the story out that other scientists need to look at this. And so he is somebody we often quote and was in our original Newswire press release because, you know, that shows the caliber. When somebody's trained the country's first astronauts, I think you have to be pretty prestigious to do that. And he is an excellent scientist, and we're lucky to have him.
How about the retired Israeli general, Haim Eshed, who, you know, caused quite a stir not too long ago, talking about, you know, that it's real, this galactic federation of alien species.
I think you'll find that his initial thoughts himself, where he thought it was real, is one thing, but he then was quoted heavily about galactic federations. When you actually looked into the story, he hadn't experienced any of that, and this is what other people had given him information. I personally don't see any evidence for a galactic civilization. I'm not saying it can't happen. I just don't see enough evidence to say that it has happened.
All right, Gary, so we've got about a minute here, and then we're going to take a break and bring Don Schmidt on. So what's the next step? I mean, are you sitting back waiting for June 25th, or what's happening next with ICER?
Well, from our point of view, we've launched. Obviously, there was lots of things to do to get ready for the launch. Now we're into the launch phase one, which is establish ourselves, hopefully as a main player in this subject, and begin to create the awareness programs. So now we have working groups working on those programs now and finding out what programs, how do we tailor it, what would we cater for, what would go in it, how are we going to do it? Are we going to do it via PowerPoint? Is it going to be a one-day course? Is it going to be a week-to-week course? And obviously, once we get those tailored, then sooner or later down the line, we're hoping that public bodies like governments will say, actually, you're way ahead of us. We do need to prepare for this. This is a crazy situation, but we don't know anything about it. We're going to turn to you for our evidential history. Can you teach us about it? And then we do it and cascade it down, trainers, teaching trainers kind of thing. It's a huge undertaking that we're trying to do, but we think that somebody has to do this, and we should be preparing for that what if now to try to bring, one, the fear down, and two, alleviate the psychological stress that it would cause some people. Not all. You're still going to go to work. You're still going to get on buses, get on planes, and do your normal daily things. But some people will be vulnerable and traumatized, like the pandemic did with lockdowns, etc. So if we can alleviate that, then I think it's well worth trying.
All right. Well, thank you for introducing us to ICER, Gary. ICER.network. ICER.network. And I'm sure we'll talk again in the not-too-distant future.
Thank you.
Gary Hesseltine, Vice President, ICER.
A new Conspiracy Unlimited with Richard Serrett drops every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at conspiracyunlimitedpodcast.com. Blow your mind. That is all for now. Oh, and remember to share and give a 5-star review because we have huge egos and need love. We're like cats. We need constant petting.